I'd like to call the meeting to order at 2:03. And we need to do a roll call.
Ms. Forrester is absent by prior arrangement. Mr. Anderson
Here.
and Ms. Cavanis and Ms. Smith are all present.
Here.
Okay.
I don't
So-
see Doris. Is she on there?
Yes,
Yes.
hey, Doris.
And then we have Rosalba and Colin
Hello.
from Brown Armstrong.
Nice. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We would need to do the Pledge of Allegiance as well. James, would you like to, or Jim, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the
to
flag
the flag
of the
Of the
United States
of America
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And welcome, Rosalba and Colin.
Thank you.
So do we need, I don't think we need, it's not an action item, approval of last year's minutes. Has everyone read the minutes, and is there any discussion on the minutes? No.
Nope.
Okay, well then, we'll move on to, I'll take it, let Rosalba and Colin take it from here.
Sure, thank you. And I just want to start by thanking you for your time this week. It seems like we're always having this meeting during Thanksgiving week, and it's obviously a very busy week. So I appreciate you making time for this presentation. So today we just want to be able to provide you with the audit opinions that we expect to issue. I am the lead audit partner responsible for all audit services that are provided to the plan. And joining me today is Colin Lowe. He is the manager on the engagement. He's been working with your management fairly closely throughout the audit. And so he's going to be not presenting with me, I'll be presenting, but he's going to be available also for any questions. So we just put a quick short agenda just to go over our presentation. Obviously, the main part of the presentation is going to be going over those audit opinions. But we also like to just give you this opportunity to ask any questions that you may have regarding our audit procedures, if there's any questions on also the financial statements or any of the reports. And again, keep in mind that these are reports in draft format. So we want to give you the opportunity to comment, ask any questions before they're actually finalized. What you see on the display again is a short agenda. I'm going to be going over the audit opinions, tell you a little bit about how we conducted our audit, and then also tell you a little bit about our scope of services, which is the reason why you engaged us. Slide 4, please. So just really quick again, in the conduct of our audit, as we're doing our financial statement audit, we are having to follow several standards, not only the AICPA issued standards, but also auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. And obviously those standards require that at the conclusion of our audit, we are rendering our opinion on the financial statements. So in addition to following those standards, we're also following government auditing standards that are also required to report to you any instances of any findings that we have in the audit. As we're conducting our audit, we're reviewing your internal controls, that might be significant, and making sure that transactions are being reported correctly through your systems. So I'll be also talking about the report on internal controls over financial reporting. Because you are a government type entity, we are also required to review controls and compliance with laws and regulations. And I'll be going over that report here shortly. And then also, just one step back, Colin, just really quick also, with regards to communicating with you, obviously, we don't get to have a lot of interaction as we're conducting our audit. Obviously, we're mostly communicating with management. And so this standard requires that there is written communication with you at the conclusion of the audit so that we can inform you any significant matters as they pertain to the audit. So I'll be going over that required communication here momentarily, but I just wanted to kind of give you a really quick recap of the scope of our audit. And then also really quick for your information, we always like to just give you information regarding our audit timeline. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of planning that goes, you know, behind closed doors before we start performing our procedures. We start pulling our populations, our samples, and working on our information request list, developing our audit plan. That happens in June and July. And then obviously we send our very detailed information requests to your management so that they can start working on the items that we're going to need to work on the audit. And so we did schedule our actual audit to be performed the week of September 7th. You know, typically we break down our engagements in 2 different phases, interim and final field work. But for your plan, we actually do everything all in 1 week. So you can imagine the amount of work that is done all in 1 week. So not only are we doing testing of internal controls, we're also obviously refreshing our understanding of the key accounting areas. You know, obviously because we've conducted your audit, you know, a couple of years already, we have a good understanding of the key accounting areas. But, you know, every year there's, you know, changes in procedures. There might be updated policies. You might have staffing changes. And so every year we go through that exercise and make sure that we're updating our walkthroughs and getting an understanding of current procedures and policies. So in addition to that, we're obviously always looking at committee and board minutes to make sure that any significant matters that would be relevant to the audit that we have a good understanding of. And then, as I stated, you know, typically we would have interim and then we would finish that, make changes to our audit plan, and then do a final field work, but we do it all kind of at the same time because when we do start our audit, your books have already been closed. And so we're also substantiating all accounts and balances at that time, reviewing confirmations responses since we do send confirmations to third parties as well as to your participants. And so one thing that we really like to do is kind of have a sort of a wrap-up call with your management to make sure that we discuss where the audit stands, if we have any recommendations, if we had any adjustments, or if there were just any significant open items, we want to make sure that we discuss those with your management. So we held that on October 7th, went very well. We communicated with your management where we were on the audit and what the next steps were. So, and then subsequent to that, once we wrapped up our audit procedures, we assisted with the drafting of the financial statements, obviously looking at the funding valuation and your actuarial evaluation reports on GASB 67. That was done also in October. And then we provided draft reports and any recommendations at the beginning of November. So that's kind of where we stand right now. Obviously, once you okay the reports and you provide us with authorization, we would be proceeding to issuing our audit opinion. So that's kind of just a quick on the audit timeline. And then on this slide, we just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about the audit areas of focus. You know, we understand obviously that, you know, as much and as well as as controls can be created, there could still be an opportunity for some kind of circumvention of internal controls. And so as part of our audit plan, we recognize that there are some risks. And so we try to first identify these and then also come up with a plan to reduce or mitigate some of those risks. So some of the risks that we've identified, obviously revenue recognition, but again, we do perform quite a lot of procedures to mitigate this risk. including sending confirmations to third parties. And then also, as we're doing our participant testing, we're also looking at contribution amounts. And then obviously we're doing other procedures to substantively analyze these account balances. And then another area of risk is obviously the possibility of management override of controls. We understand that, there's always the opportunity to make changes through your journal entry process. And so one of the procedures that we perform is, number one, making sure that we have a good understanding of these control policies and procedures that are done over journal entries, making sure that there are good segregation of duties, that transactions are properly being authorized and recorded. And so we do a sample of journal entry testing. And then we also, again, review and perform a walkthrough of this area to make sure there are good controls. So those are kind of the significant risk. In regards to the areas that we focus on, I wanted to also spend a little bit of time in talking about this, just because, we do approach our audit on a risk-based approach, meaning that, we do identify some of the areas that we consider have a higher risk of error, irregularities, or misstatements. And so obviously we do spend a little bit more time in this area. But, obviously these are not the only areas that we look at, but, because of the risk in nature, we do spend a lot of time on these areas. And so in regards to investments and related earnings, obviously we know that we're dealing with very high dollar amounts here. And so we do also perform our obviously walkthroughs and understanding over this area, performing high level analytics. But we also do spend a lot of time in doing a three-way reconciliation. Obviously we're sending confirmations to your custodian, your management, and also your consultant. And so we're reconciling all that information and making sure that they agree to the accounting records. And then also, as an addition to that, we're also looking at, these audited financial statements that are issued by the, external third parties of your investment managers. And we're looking at those financial statements. And then obviously making sure that they are obtaining clean opinions. And then we're also looking at their SOC reports, the reports on internal controls, to making sure obviously that these organizations have good controls, again, that they are being externally audited by reputable firms, obtaining a clean opinion, and also making sure that there are no findings that are being reported in these SOC reports that would be significant. And so we document all that in our procedures, and if we see something that seems to be of a high risk, then we would also communicate that with your management. So that's kind of some of the procedures that we perform on investments and related earnings. We obviously spend a lot of time also on participant data and actuary. Obviously we know that there's a lot of transactions going through the system. And so we do also send a sample of confirmation requests to your participants, both active and retirees. And so because that information is coming specifically from your active and retired participants, it's information coming that is externally, so we consider it to be higher or better audit evidence. And so if we see any discrepancies between that information and what's being recorded in your system, we investigate, and make sure that there's some type of resolution, and or if it's something that needs to be corrected, we definitely report it to you. So we spend a lot of time doing our recalculations in addition to just the confirmations. And obviously we're also confirming with the employers and also with the actuary to make sure that that information is also recorded and reported correctly. And then also, since the issuance of GASB statement number 67, we're also spending a lot of time looking at those actuary evaluation reports, making sure that we have a good understanding of the assumptions that are being used, and that the information that is being provided and disclosed in the financial statements is in accordance with that standard. So in regards to a couple more areas that are significant, benefit payments and employee and employer contributions, In addition to also doing a walkthrough over these areas, we're also performing procedures as we're doing our participant data for both benefit payments and employee contributions, but we're also doing some high-level analytics for these areas. So that's kind of some of the areas that we focus on. Did you have any questions? Feel free to stop me at any point. If not, I'll just go ahead and jump into the results of the audit and the reports. Okay, so then obviously the most important part of the audit is being able to provide you with our audit opinions. Very, very happy to report that the opinion on the financial statements that we're planning to issue is an unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion. And obviously we are very satisfied with all the information provided, and we can assert that the financial statements are materially stated and in compliance with all applicable standards. So congratulations to that. And then I also talked about the report on internal controls, and also mentioned that as a government entity, we are required to look at internal controls as we're performing our procedures and communicating to you if we find any issues, including significant deficiencies, material weaknesses, or any non-compliance with laws and regulations. And so we are required to report to you any instances in which you did not comply with laws and regulations. So happy to report that there were no material weaknesses noted. There was no compliance noted as well. We did have one significant deficiency that we identified. I mean, it is a repeat from prior year. You know, we understand that, you know, the plan is small, and sometimes, you know, you can't have, you know, complete segregation of duties, but we know that management is working on coming up with a plan to implement some segregation of duties. And so we've been provided with an updated response. We reviewed it, we were comfortable with it, and we're going to be following up on the status next year.
And if I could just jump in for a second, Rosava,
Sure.
for the trustees' information, this had to do with review of journal entries on the financial system. We've already added a layer of review to some journal entries. We still have some journal entries where the process isn't fully in place yet, and that's why it's being carried forward, but it is being worked on.
Correct. Thanks, Doris. And then as we're conducting our audit, obviously, and, you know, with our understanding and having a lot of experience with other plans similar to yours, we also can have certain recommendations, you know, as a best practice that we recommend on specific areas as we're conducting our audit. So as a result of going through our audit, we also had one recommendation that was related to information technology. And I wanted to let you know also that, you know, we have developed a whole audit plan for information technology. Obviously, when we are developing our plan, we first assess, you know, what type of where the risk is, and if we consider your association to be in a higher risk, depending on what kind of systems are being utilized. So, you know, obviously, your plan has a lot of reliance still through the county. And so we review if they have any management letter items that are reported. But because of how the system is set up, we did perform limited procedures over information technology this year. And also because, you know, there weren't any significant changes in systems. Like if you would have had, you know, a new upgrade on like your pension gold system. So if you have something like that in a given year, we would obviously perform additional procedures. So we just kind of did a roll forward over prior year procedures, you know, getting an understanding of what changed during the year. And there was that finding that I mentioned, but it was also a repeat from prior year. And it had to do with passwords and making sure that there are changes that staff is having to change, you know, passwords. And also this is something that your organization has not been able to fully implement because they do plan to have an upgrade. And at that time, I believe there's a 2-factor authentication that will be built in place. And so they feel that it's best to wait until that pension upgrade is performed to be able to fully implement this recommendation. Did I explain it
If I
right,
could just
Doris?
stop in right there for a moment. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Was someone else speaking? Okay. LRS actually just recently completed what they refer to as the ESF upgrade. It's a background upgrade that has to do with servers and security configuration software and equipment. It didn't actually change any of the actual functionality of our Pension Gold version. However, now that those changes on the back end have been completed, we can now look at increasing the password security and things of that nature. Now, the two-factor authentication would be rolled out to, I believe, the member portal when we have an opportunity to do so based on cost. But we will be looking at making a requirement for staff to change their password with a certain frequency, and use some industry standards there is not allow you to use the password that you've used, previously, and the requirement for length and complexity. But that's really what we were talking about as far as the needed upgrades was.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions on that recommendation? All right, so continuing on the results of the audit, I have one additional letter to go over. This is your required communication at the conclusion of an audit, also referred to as the SAS 114 letter. And again, I explained at the onset of the presentation that we don't normally communicate with you as we're conducting the audit. We're mostly communicating with your management. So audit standards do require that we provide you with any important matters as they relate to the audit. So if we had any new GASPs that were implemented, we would be making sure that that's being disclosed in this letter. If there were any significant estimates that were used in the financial statements, if there were any corrected or uncorrected misstatements that were proposed during the audit, or if there were any disagreements with management. So just a few items that I wanted to go over. There were a few standards that were required to be implemented in the fiscal year, but there weren't any that really affected the plan. And so we just didn't note them in the letter because they wouldn't have an impact anyway. So there were no new GASP standards that would have affected whose implementation would have been affected in the current year. So nothing to report there. We did look at significant estimates, one of them being obviously fair value of investments, and then contributions and the net pension liability. Obviously, there's a lot of estimation. We reviewed estimates that are used by management. We obtained an understanding, and we felt comfortable with those estimates being used. And then also happy to report that we did not have any proposed audit adjustments. So congratulations to management. And we worked very well with management during the conduct of our audit and did not have any disagreements. So that's all that I wanted to cover in this report. And then just really quick, before I conclude, I just wanted to cover really quick the financial statements. Obviously, we issue an annual financial report, and then there's also the comprehensive financial report that gets submitted to the GFOA award. So the first one that we're going to be issuing is the annual financial statements. And then once those are issued, we will be assisting your management with reviewing the comprehensive annual financial report and submitting that to the GFOA. So obviously this is, a huge undertaking, especially, for your plan that, there's not a lot of employees. So I just wanted to highlight that last year's submission to the GFOA was absolutely no comments. So congratulations to management on a well-done document. And obviously that sets the bar really high. So we'll strive for the same this year. So that's kind of all I wanted to highlight. And just lastly, as I stated, we do something very different for your plan, which is doing interim and year-end all at once, asking for a lot of information. Your staff and management is always very well prepared, provide all the information. And obviously that helps us, making sure that we meet our deadlines to you. So I just wanted to thank management and staff for all their help with the audit again this year. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All those things should go to Robert, though.
Yes, but also to you, Doris, because I know there was huge undertaking and, all these things that were done this year, not only with, processing corrections, but, obviously making a lot of changes. So congratulations to you and the entire staff.
Were there any comments or questions from the trustees?
Kathy has her hand raised. Well, Kathy, we can't hear you.
Oh, looks like her mic isn't working for some reason.
I don't have you muted.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Kathy, if you want to email me your comments or something, I'm happy to follow up with it. Now she's on mute.
Now
Can you
you're
hear me?
unmuted.
Oh, there we go.
Now I can hear you.
It said I wasn't muted, so I don't know. My microphone doesn't work on my computer, so I have to use my AirPods. But anyway, I'm sorry. I was pointing saying, go to Jim while I fix this, but it didn't work out. Anyway, just a comment. I appreciate the explanations, Doris, that you made.
There you go. I can't hear you again.
Okay, go to Jim.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to thank Doris and Robert and staff for the fine work that they did, and also the auditors for the amount of effort that went into the 1 week audit. So I greatly appreciate that. I reviewed all of the items that were submitted for this meeting, and the work just looked excellent. So thank you very much. The only question that I did have, and I asked Doris this one before, is in looking at the reserves. If you can remind me, Doris, where we have negative reserves for the county, is what we have other projects going on, but where we may be going with reconciling those reserves.
We do have some negative reserves. They're really tier 1, where we don't have, like for safety of probation, any active members. Because we credit negative interest on the negative reserve balance, it's been increasingly large negative number there. We're going to actually coordinate with the actuary on some suggestions on how to address the structure of the reserves there. So that is something we're working on. But yes, you are correct. We do have 2 or 3, whatever it is, individual reserves that show negative balances. That is not further affecting the overall funding of the plan or anything. That's already obviously incorporated in all the valuation and in the accounting that's presented in the reports.
Great, thanks. And one other quick one, and I know this has been around for a while, is in addition to the CAFR, I know long ago they were talking about a PAFR, something shorter.
We don't do a PAFR.
Extra work. Yeah, on a limited staff, but I didn't know if that was still kind of a financial objective.
We might look in that again once we're through the correction project. It is nice sort of to have the short summary that we can provide via email to all of our members or something. But at this point in time, we don't anticipate producing a PAFR until after we're through with the correction project to even go back and consider it.
Thank you.
And just also really quick comment with GASB standard number 98. It's not required to be implemented this year, but it could be early implemented. The term CAFR is gone. So now it's ACFR, if that's how you want to call it, or if you want to just spell it all out, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
So I would amend that to APFR.
If I could jump in and just remind Doris that we are working on a plan sponsor presentation that will be kind of like one of the popular reports. You muted, Doris.
That's a good point, Robert. For the trustees, we are working on a presentation for our plan sponsors. We do hope to preview that with the board first, but it does have a summary of some of the highlights from our financials and from our actuarial report, and just a little bit of an educational process to kind of make sure our plan sponsors understand how we get to what their contributions are, and a little bit of a basic understanding of what creates a UAAL, or unfunded liability, and the amortization of it and payment of it. So that is something that I had asked Robert to undertake, and we probably will have something for the board in January.
So would this be a regular Board of Supervisors meeting?
It was not necessarily intended for the Board of Supervisors, but it was actually going to be invited for all of our plan sponsors, whether we do them individually or as a group, for the district and the courts, and certainly the CEO's office. But I hadn't really thought about making it as a presentation to the Board of Supervisors, although it certainly could if there was interest on that end, and I can check with the CEO's office or with Dan.
Yeah. I'm sure they would be interested. It's an assumption, but I think yes.
Was there an additional question?
I emailed
Oh,
one.
thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, I just want to say, I thank you, Doris, for the explanations about the significant deficiencies, but I'm a little bit concerned just from history about having something repeated from prior years. To have the same comment 2 years in a row is just a little bit concerning from a board point of view. So I guess the question would be, if there wasn't time to fix it, or it wasn't priority, or it
I
just
think
didn't
part
happen.
of it was an incomplete understanding of what was expected on our end. We put in the requested changes in review of some of the accounting journal entries, specifically the unrealized gain work that's done each month, but we hadn't moved on to include all of the journal entries that Robert's processes, and that's where it showed up again as an outstanding issue from the prior year.
Doris,
Okay.
and we can actually add to the document partially implemented if that helps in any way. But I did want to also mention that, it does take, especially with a small size plan like yours, and where you can't, allow all these segregation of duties, it can take more than one operating cycle to implement a recommendation fully. And obviously you have to take a look at cost versus benefits, how can we, add additional layer of review. Obviously from an audit standpoint, anytime there is any transactions that are initiated by one person, we do want to have that, second layer of review where another person that did not initiate it is reviewing and recording. And so obviously that's why you're kind of seeing it again. But, I think it would make sense to include that wording that it's partially implemented, because it might just look right now like it wasn't addressed, but that's not really the case. So
I think that would be clearer for the board
yeah,
members.
I'll definitely add that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any additional questions for us? you. Just
So,
if anything comes up, you feel free to email us or contact us.
so, I think what we would need to do, I don't know if we need a motion, but to recommend to the board at large, to our MCERA trustee board, to approve of the audit. Do you think that we could just by consensus that's our recommendation, or would you like to do a motion in a second?
Judy, historically, have they done something? I don't recall from last year that it was anything other than the report was being accepted by the committee. I don't recall anything going to the board.
The committee makes the recommendation to the full board to approve the report, which is a motion that does not require a second. If we look at the meeting minutes from the prior years, which I'm looking for right at the moment. Sorry, I had some computer issues earlier, so I didn't get them open prior to the meeting, so bear with me. I'm looking to see if a motion and a vote was made at last meeting.
From last year's minutes, I can see that there was a motion made by Ms. Forrester to accept the financial statements and recommend approval of the external audit report for the year, yada, yada, to present to the board at the December meeting. So
Yes,
that actually did have a second and then was voted on.
yes, and we would need the committee to do that today. And then the committee's recommendation and approval of the report goes to the full board for their acceptance.
And the reports you saw were drafts. So as Rosalba mentioned, they'll make that final change to the one finding, and what will go to the board will be the final report.
So is there a motion to approve?
I'll move since Kathy's muted.
Okay, is there a second? Okay,
Kathy seconds.
okay. So we want to do a roll call? We want to do a roll call vote?
Yes. Mr. Anderson,
Aye.
Ms. Smith, and Ms. Cavness.
Yes.
Okay, so your recommendation's approved. Thank you.
Okay. So is there any further discussion on any aspects of the report? And we thank you very, very much once
You're
again.
very welcome.
Okay.
We appreciate your time again.
Yes, we appreciate yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.